Georgia is the founder of Expecting Together. And while in London in 2023, Georgia realized something special was happening there that wasn't taking place in the rest of the world. There was something called a prenatal social club where parents were able to build friendships and get support for one another while they were going through this life changing experience. Georgia felt prepared. She felt like she actually had people that were there to support her. And of course, with the loneliness epidemic that's happening in the world, she felt like she had a supportive community. Now, when Georgia returned to the US, she had friends that were telling her they felt overwhelmed, isolated, and alone. And she realized that this connection wasn't happening in the US the same as it was abroad. Georgia, thanks for joining us today. Does this really accurately describe how Expecting Together came about? I'd love to hear a little bit more about your story.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks, Matt. I'm happy to be here. You pretty much nailed it. As you said, I feel super fortunate. Moved here to London, the UK for a job. And my boyfriend at the time, who's now my husband and the father of said daughter that you mentioned, it was kind of honestly a scary time to find out that I was pregnant and living far from the US. And actually, my husband's
Right.
Italian, so his support network is in Italy. So we have friends here, no doubt about that. But entering this new stage of life without really close support network like our families, and for me, all new friends, people that I had met within the last previous few years of being here, it definitely could have been an extremely isolating, lonely time. And so many people in my network were mentioning oh, you of course you're going to join. The longest standing group here is the NCT, but there's some other groups that are, as you said, a prenatal social club, and this is how you prepare both from an educational standpoint, but also getting connected to other human beings who live close to you that are all going to be delivering ideally 5 weeks of you. So you really are embarking on this next chapter together. And I think it just saved me. I mean, postpartum was a really hard time anyway. I'm not trying to sugarcoat
Yeah.
that, but having people that were going through a really similar time, I could go out and have a coffee with these people. And the coolest thing about it was that my husband and I built a new support network together, which I think is a really rare thing in life today. It's like you can meet people through work or you can meet them through different clubs, but when you have a partner and you are going through something so intense that you together meet people also on that same path, at the same time together, it was just so unique and something that I thought Americans would love. Yeah, that's the story of the founding of Expecting Together.
That's so wild to me that hearing and speaking with you about this, we both kind of had that same reaction. I'm sure you've had that with other people, but I'd love maybe you could describe the specific feeling or the elements of that community that stood out to you. Being here, but in the US, of course, there's not really this expectation. It's kind of like, okay, just go to a class. Can you talk to me a little bit more about those feelings and what made this more than just a class?
Yeah, definitely. I think when we actually were in the class, there was a lot of activity done that was about getting to know each other. And I will say, for Expecting Together, we were inspired by that, but our mission at Expecting Together is actually even going to go deeper on that. This
Mm.
program, this company is not going to be a success unless parents come out of it and tell us, I feel way more prepared than I did before the class, and I feel way more connected. And we're actually looking at metrics and KPIs that are saying, do you feel both when you come out of our experience? But some things that happen in that class, there is an automatic electricity in the room when you enter because most all of us were first time parents. This is it does second time parents are not excluded from this at all, but I think being a first time parent, you show up and we're all kind of in the end of our second or maybe starting your third trimester. So everyone looks quite physically pregnant. It's a very different thing for people to be like, my body's changing, my life is changing. And I
Mhm.
think women admittedly do talk to their friends about these things, and I think you can go to a mom or a sister or other friends who have been through it. It is a really unique experience if you're one of those people that's the first in your friend group to get to have a baby, because I think it's even more valuable there. I don't want to discredit that the partners, and I mean it doesn't always have to be a dad, it can be your birth partner, it could be whoever is going to be along that journey with you, but they felt a safe space to ask questions. And I think to talk about what was special about the community, I would say the partners by class 3 or 4 were the ones asking more questions because they did feel like this is a safe space. At doctor's appointment, kind of very focused on mom and baby, where here it was we're relaxed, we're having a conversation. You're not in a hospital, you're not in a very sterile setting. Expecting Together will be hosting classes in comfortable places. You can sit on a couch and you're learning from an expert, but creating that comfortable environment is something that we're really passionate about. So, to answer your question, obviously entering the same stage at the same time, like the physical changes, the emotional changes, knowing that like we're all walking into a room with that same mentality, I think was like just really, really special. And then doing things to actually foster that community. So, for Expecting Together, you'll fill out a brief survey ahead of time, and we will do things to actually like work on that social cohesion. So, like, hey, couple one and two, like, did you know that you actually went to the same university? And maybe you didn't because you're not exactly the same age, or you went to a big school. And sometimes some of those things like take a while. You have to have multiple conversations. We're doing our best to push that a little bit, where in today's day and age, I think it takes like a really long time to get down to some of those logistical connections that you might have with people. Yeah, special time, but also it's hard to meet friends in adulthood, and we're trying to harness this moment as a way to do that.
That's really beautiful. Can you talk to me about that moment when you realized that this was such a tremendous opportunity for you to be able to bring this to more people in the world? I'd love to understand a little bit more about that feeling, because going through this and then hearing it, you'd think it would be so obvious, but yet it's not something that people tend to think about or experience outside of that culture that you were in over there in Europe. Can you talk a little bit more about that aha moment and realization that this was something that the world needs?
Yeah, definitely. A lot of my friends and family were worried about me. "Oh, you're far
Mm,
away. Are you okay?" As I probably the end of the pregnancy and afterwards, and I was like, "I actually feel great. I'm happy. I've got people I can talk to." And then I started to share kind of our experience and how I had this group of honestly, postpartum, I had 10 women. We were all in a group chat, and we were able to talk about the experiences we were having, and every Wednesday, we would meet up at a restaurant. Come when you can, come with the baby, do what you can do. But we had the ability to connect. And so many people that I talked to back in the States were like, I would have loved something like this. I did know a friend of a friend who was pregnant at the same time. We would text sometimes, but it felt extremely circumstantial if
yeah.
you felt connection and community at that stage of your life. If, like, did you have a family member or a friend that just happened to get pregnant at the same time as you? Then great, you kind of felt that connection. But for those that have moved to a new city, which is super common for Americans, especially, like whether that's for school or a new job, many people find themselves in situations where they and their partner have moved for an opportunity and they don't have a village around them, as we say. It takes a village to raise a
Yeah.
child. So I was like, I think there's really something here. I think that there's a way to build this for people and give it to them. And I think I don't want to discredit there are like small little groups. They're usually quite focused on moms, like a mom's group. But I saw that like there was an opportunity to go even further to bring this model to the US and not make it circumstantial. Oh, do you happen to fall into the right group? We can actually build like a structured program around this. Did a ton of interviews, asked a ton of people questions, like from all over the US and Canada too, actually. They have some programs like this in Canada, but I think the US is my main focus here. But it really was it was very clear there was a gap here, and very clear that this is something that people were really, really interested in. For existing parents, they wish they would have had it when they went through this. And for people that are like thinking about parenthood, I would love something like this. I don't know anything. I don't know what to expect. So like good education as well as meeting people at this stage is going to be great. So yeah, felt a lot of validation, like in even just the earliest days of like just talking to people about the idea.
Yeah, it's such an important thing to go to the individuals that you want to be able to work with and ask them what's going on. Being fortunate enough to talk to a lot of different community builders, choosing the model for that kind of entry and beginner stage is really tough. It's something where they think about all these different ways that they could go about bringing value to the kind of the target market that they've chose. And your model is very interesting because it blends like this expert-led education with this peer support, and of course, it's inclusive of the entire family. So, can you talk to me a little bit about how you chose to structure the kind of curriculum and the programs so that it would be really inclusive of everybody, but also have that kind of peer led, expert led education with the peer support? I'd really love to hear how you came about with that.
Yeah, definitely. So, my background is I'm a product person. Like, I've been working in big tech for the last 7, 8 years of my life. Like, I'm a business person. So, I definitely saw that like the community is very critical, but preparing people for parenthood, the kind of overwhelming feeling I got from people is there's actually a ton of information out there when you want to become a parent, but you have no idea who to trust. The algorithms start feeding you information about how to be a parent before you've even shared with your own family that you're pregnant. Like so early on, you start getting fed data and information. And so
Yeah.
I immediately understood that there was almost too much information. And then from a clinical perspective, when you go to the doctor, the appointments are kind of rushed. Like, check on mom, check on the baby, how's everything going? And unless you come in with very pointed questions, the appointments are like 15 minutes. Like you're in and you're out. So you're not going to get depth of knowledge.
Mhm.
So I knew immediately that I had to counterbalance. I needed a complementary person to bring on board early on who had the medical credibility. And so my first hire, a board certified nurse practitioner in women's health who has 15 years of experience actually bedside, starting as a labor and delivery nurse, but she's an educator herself, both educating nurses under her as well as families. Ashley Walsh comes from the women's group of Northwestern in Chicago. Not only is she so brilliant because of like her expertise and her experience, but she's a mom herself and she's really seen it all. Like every complication that there can be, she's seen it and understands the action plan of like how you deal with it in labor, delivery, and even postpartum, like with a young baby. So I took the curriculum that I had here in the UK and this was good, but we have to tailor, any education for the American market. Spoke to a lot of parents about the things that they felt the most insecure about when entering this stage of
Mm.
life. And I was actually shocked to hear that people were like, do not sugarcoat this. When you see on Instagram, like what life is about with a baby, it is beautiful. It is life changing. You go through a portal and it's like the most beautiful thing watching your child grow. But people said, I wish that people were just a bit more real with me because the days are very hard. The end of pregnancy is hard, labor, delivery. There are so many complicated things that can happen. Bringing a newborn home, very, very hard. Ashley and I wrote the curriculum together based on like kind of what I found valuable here, her clinical expertise, and then what parents told us. And we are trying to give a very real picture of what parenthood is, the pros, the cons, the highs, the lows, so that people feel like, no, I really am prepared. And I felt that I got like a holistic education. And then to answer your question, like we cover end of pregnancy, so like how to handle that third trimester, labor, delivery, complications that can happen, and kind of what's the action plan after that. Postpartum, so bringing a baby home, like what are the essential things you need in your home? How do you feed a baby? How do you feed yourself? How do you care for yourself throughout that process? And our huge differentiator and something that I'm really proud of is that for every one of those dimensions that I just mentioned, there is very, very targeted curriculum for partners. So, tactically, as a partner, what can you do to help? Even if you feel like my partner's exclusively breastfeeding and this is really hard, actively, what can you do to be a player in the game because things are chaotic? And we heard that from partners too. I want to help. I want to be hands-on dad or partner, birth partner, but sometimes none of the curriculum's really for me and I don't really know where to find things. So we're very, very focused on being mom and partner education and both building the community and giving them the tactical information they need.
That's awesome. You mentioned the fact that it is inclusive of both people, and you've already actually gone through an initial cohort, right? You've actually done some of this work here. So, my understanding of this would be that maybe the fathers would be a little bit skeptical because everything is so mom centric, right? And it makes sense. A lot of the classes, a lot of the things that people teach you about, this very intentional setup for mothers, but fathers are often not something that are considered as part of these programs other than, hey, you go to these classes and make this happen. Can you maybe share a little bit of a story about how you got these dads in the room and the value of them being there and being a part of this experience?
Totally. And in fact, Matt, I think it's like a great way to talk about community playbooks from what you're
Yeah.
building. Because our first conversation was me saying, Matt, I am so excited to build partnership community together, two people coming together. But the moms are making the purchase decision. The moms are the really excited ones, and the dads seem to get dragged along. My wife, my partner is like asking me to come to this thing. I have no idea what that's about. This is about. And mind you, we've run a pilot. So I now am building a name for myself and I'm really excited about our marketing, go to market, and how we're positioning ourselves in the market. But at this point, I'm just like an experimental group that people are joining.
Yep.
And on day
Yep.
one, like there was palpable skepticism from the dads. What is this? It's not at a hospital. We actually hosted our first class at a beautiful home of one of the other couples that could support like all 20 people. hospital, and it was casual. We had breakfast and, mingling, get to know each other, and they're like, "What have I signed myself up for?" They weren't negative, but I think it's so untraditional
You're
in terms of
hesitant.
how we're
Yeah.
preparing, yeah, for parenthood. And this is gonna be a challenge that I have going forward too, I think, as we, like, learn more and know how to reach out to dads, but where I am having, like, the aha moment from the dads and partners is post the baby being born. So, one of the fundamental things of the program is that all 20 people in the cohort, and I say 20, we will fluctuate between like 8 and 12 couples. We think kind of like the sweet spot of people in each community. But let's just say ten couples. All 20 people are put in a group chat. The moms are put in one and the partners are put in another. And what I heard from the dads after the baby started being born was like this light bulb aha moment of, wow, I remember that thing that you taught us in the class. I was so happy to do this like hands-on activity of like learning how to swaddle a baby. And the early partners that went through the process were hitting the group chat, being like, hey guys, at the hospital, don't forget X, Y, or Z. Or it's really hot, even though you're having your baby in February in Chicago, like bring a pair of shorts because they keep it really warm for the newborn babies. All those tactical
Wow.
things the dads were saying, I never would have known any of that if I just went to the hospital class or we like watched YouTube videos, and being able to hear firsthand from the dads that went before me. And by before me, I mean 1 week before me. Like it's very topical, it's very top of mind. They got it. And they're like, I totally get that, like the knowledge of the village, the knowledge of the community is so much more impactful than what I could have read online. And I'm loving it. My Google reviews are like more dads than moms. They are so like they're really bought in. But I think like this will be a challenge as I scale. Did the pilot in Chicago. We're going deep in Chicago. This really is like our building our blueprint. But the goal is to go nationwide and be in every city in the US. And I think getting dads on board to be like, we're going to pay for this thing. We're going to join this club. They're going to get it, but they might not get it like right out of the gate. They don't know. Why is this different than a hospital class? Why is it better? That's where, Matt, you come in place to help me with the messaging around the community and getting the word out to kind of break any stigmas from the non-birthing partner.
Thank you for that. And one of the things that I love about getting to talk with expert founders like you is that there is such a deep understanding of the psychological aspect of this because community is what at its core, right? It's you and two other people. That's otherwise it's just you and a friend. And so, how do you go about building this in a conscious and intentional way? The stories of when you get those moments are so critical for you to be able to build this and make this into a true business. And I love your tagline too for how you're looking at this, right? It's build your village. That this is such a common colloquial saying that we have. How do you actually go about doing this? And when you think about, I would love to evaluate this even from its kind of core element. If you think about the periodic table of elements, you've got iron and aluminum and boron. You've got these different elements. What would you consider is the core element for community builders? What are the kind of ingredients that cultivate the success? Because you got great feedback from your initial cohort. What do you think were the ingredients as a community builder that made that happen so that you were able to not only have this come together, but you were able to get really good insights and use those learnings going forward? What do you think was the recipe for that?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think one thing that I have working to my advantage in terms of building this community is that like this is a super vulnerable time in people's lives. They are vulnerable and they do open themselves up, and they are open to support in a really different way. And I think one thing, like one statistic that I've been throwing out a lot about that pilot was we hosted it this year in Chicago in February. And anyone who's from Chicago in February or have been there is like getting people to physically come out and do something in person. Like it's a gamble. Like, were people going to find value in this? And I think just to be clear, like it's sessions, we cover each session, but 1 week at a time. So you're constantly
Right.
coming back, meeting back up with those people. So there was a little fear, like, if on day 1 they don't get the most value or they're not sure about something, will they come back? But I'm really proud to say we had 0 churn. Every single couple showed
Wow.
up for every single session, and I think one thing that is people at this stage of their life, they're entering, like, one of the most transformational seasons. They are bought in to giving something of themselves. Like they are vulnerable, they're there to ask questions, they're there to show up because they recognize what's about to happen. Now, I think you could build community in lots of different areas. I think there's also a lot to be said like starting a new job, starting a new industry. There's so many
Yeah.
transformative things that you are vulnerable, you want to ask questions, you want to find a peer group and ask an expert for guidance. But I think that's something that's like very, very critical is just getting people in a state where they're willing to show up and willing to be vulnerable to say, I'm open to meeting new people and I'm open to learning from others. And then finally, I think communities, you give what you get, right? Getting people to like actually be there and contribute. And like our community means nothing if people aren't sharing, hey, this worked for me and my family, or hey, we love this stroller for XYZ reason. You should try it too. And I'm seeing that happen, that people are giving tips and tricks and sharing what they're learning as well as asking questions. And I think that's super, super critical.
Yeah. One of the things that I absolutely love and I've just been so obsessed with lately is the principles around network effects and how being able to have one couple in one room alone with one instructor, right? That doesn't give as much value as just having that exact same setup, but you have 10 couples in one room with one instructor and going through this experience. And the beauty of these kinds of businesses is that network effects really bring more value to the individual, the more high quality people that you get to be a part of this ecosystem. And understanding that these insights are going to be leveraged because you have 10 couples in this room for this first experience. You are going to gain insights. You're going to learn more about what people want and need from this experience. You can iterate, and the next version, the next cohort, you're always going to be continually improving here. One of the things that also I've been running into a lot when I talk with other founders in this space is that engagement is really a big challenge. And you mentioned you had 0% churn, which is crazy. But you've also thought about long-term engagement. Talking about support, a continual support in these chat groups, reunions. Can you talk to me a little bit more about the specific strategies that you're employing to continually make this a part of people's lives versus just a one and done class that they do once and then never be a part of again?
Yeah. The interesting thing is I'm so passionate about this early product, like the cohort-led prenatal education. But as a parent myself, and I have another on the way,
Congratulations. Yeah.
thank you. Thank you. The questions do not stop when that baby enters the world. No doubt. In fact, they just begin. And every new phase, it is such a beautiful time, like that first year of life. And now my daughter, we're in her second year of life. And it's every new stage, whether it's teething or when do we start potty training or learning to walk or food, like allergies and food refusal. It's like I have a million questions about everything. And one thing that we're really excited about is that we do feel that we are earning couples' trust in this early cohort-led model. Like, we believe really strongly in the education we're putting out there, and we are proud of the communities that we're building and going to continue to build. We want to harness that for future education. And because we know who you are and we know, roughly when your child was born, we want to continue to be that trusted support for parents as they enter that next hairy, crazy stage of raising a kid. So, lots of ideas in this space, but like a very tactical example is for me as a mom, one of the scariest things for me, one of the things that probably induced the most anxiety, I didn't feel that anxious as a mom, but was weaning my daughter to like solid foods. Like, you have to
Mm,
start to transition from milk at some point to eating food. Kids
yeah.
can't live off milk forever. But it's a scary thing, like, they seem that they're gonna choke every time. What do I introduce allergies? And we're really excited about saying, "Hey, Matt, we know that little Tommy is 4 months old, and it's time to start thinking about that. Do you wanna reengage with us? Do you wanna join an e-learning class? Do you want us to send you valuable information about this stage? Or do you want to reengage with your community?" Like, we'd be happy to do in real life classes too, back for that community or with people that, again, have kids at the same age. And those are like definitely the next product life cycle, like what we're thinking about. But I'm really excited about that because as a mom myself, I'm living this journey as I'm building this company. I see the things that are giving me stress, and I'm like, God, it would be so great to get tips from a pro, talk to parents about these things. And then the cohort that you entered your prenatal education with, they're not going away. My group
Yeah.
in London, we still are talking about where are you sending the kids to daycare? How did vaccines
Wow.
go? Do you have any tips and tricks about getting over their first illnesses? There is something super magical about we entered this different milestone set together. And it does kids actually are pretty predictable in terms of like when they're hitting certain milestones and when certain things are happening. We want to keep fostering that. And then reunions too. So like I said, we are education, making people feel educated and supported, huge pillar of our success. But the other side is feeling connected, feeling that you have people to talk to. So reunion events, like we do have a strategic actual reunion with all of the families when the babies are about 4 months old, which is like when you can have some predictability in your schedule
Yeah.
and everything can come out again. Those are the structured things we do. And I want to be clear, that's like the business side, but the families and the connection and them continuing to talk and have each other, that goes nowhere. We just want to build a great infrastructure to get them started on that path to continue without us.
The beauty of it is the mutual success, right? Because being able to foster these connections at this right moment. You and I were talking a little bit about this before we hit record, but I think it's such a special moment in history, especially where knowledge is the easiest thing you could possibly attain. But what people are really craving, I'm seeing out in the world, is wisdom, especially wisdom from other people in these moments going through the same journey and that same phase. It's very different to go and Google and read something versus, hey guys, I have this experience. I'm a new dad and I need to wear shorts to this experience because it's going to be hot for this. Those are the kinds of things that a Google search would never be able to tell you, nor would an AI be able to answer as effectively because of having those different experiences. I just think it's such a beautiful moment to be able to create this experience for people that is ongoing, that people can opt into, but also it again builds more trust between you and your members, but also for them to be able to go through this very important journey and get this just in time wisdom. It's like with just in time learning, it's so valuable that you get
Totally.
these things when you need them most, that you don't just constantly absorb things. One of the things that I think is so interesting about your journey, especially, is you've obviously gone through this cohort here, and a lot of people are thinking about these hyperlocal communities. And in building this, I'd love maybe you could share a story or a lesson from this first cohort that you did. Can you talk a little bit about these crucial first steps? Like what made this an operational success? What were maybe some of the challenges that you found? Like you mentioned, one of the members actually opened up their home, which was really gracious for them. Can you just maybe talk a little bit about how you thought about putting this together in the first place for these hyper local communities and how people could maybe learn from that experience?
Yeah, definitely. And I think that is going to be like from an operational perspective, something that's going to be a bit of a work in progress as we build out Chicago. Because when we did the pilot, it was soliciting interest, understanding who would want to do this, finding. We knew generally the neighborhoods where doing some research. I mean, like, where are a lot of families located? Like, where will people be interested in this? And we made some gut assumptions about where we would build the pilot. But as we scale, and we're going to be running lots of these cohorts in tandem, finding the right locations as well as grouping together the right people. So step one on our website is you come in and you register and you let us know that you're expecting and you provide us with your zip code and your due date. And that's step one to just say, okay, we've got classes. We can, or like a cohort, a community to put you in. We've got classes that make sense working back from your due date. So we recommend a class to you and say, hey, Matt, this would be the best class based on when you're having your baby. And we want it to be close to you because once you have a baby, your world gets a lot smaller. I mean, you can put that baby in a car and you can drive places, but like having people that are maybe a 5-10 minute drive or even ideally walk away in some urban areas is a lifesaver to just go and get a breath of fresh
Yeah.
air and get a cup of coffee with someone who's going through the exact same thing. So that's criteria one. And then couples will opt into the either the recommended class or if they have a personal reason that they would like, we show them all of the communities they can join. Because let's say you live here now, but once the baby comes, you're going to move somewhere else. So you'd actually rather do the class with a community that's going to be make a lot more sense for you after the baby arrives. We don't mandate like which community you join. We recommend and then you can choose. And then once they're committed and they're going to do that class, we ask them to fill out a survey. It takes 5 to 7 minutes and it's just family information about their family and everything's optional. Like we would like people to share a lot, but if they're not comfortable yet, like I said, that trepidation showing up to the first day, what am I signing up for? We ask them though things about logistically, where are you delivering
Mhm.
and what type of birth, or like ask them questions about the kind of parents that they want to be, because we think sometimes that can be like a nice way to get people talking. And even like I said, logistically, if 5 of the 10 couples are delivering at the same hospital, we can share some tailored information that maybe makes sense for them there. But then what are your hobbies? 7 of the 10 people love to play golf or like to bike ride. Like it's just a nice thing for them to volunteer, for then us to be able to share with the class on day one. These are things that you have in common. And this is, now that you know, dive into that deeper. It's like the information that they're willing to volunteer, but then we are using AI help us find the right connections between these people. And on day one, when they arrive in the class, we actually are pushing some of that to say, Georgia and my husband Robbie are going to sit next to Sally and Steve, and here's something that you have in common, and letting them know those things right away based on
Beautiful.
the profile that they've put together. Yeah. So we're excited about that. So natural conversations and connection are wonderful. Just sometimes it might take a little bit longer. So we're trying to expedite that and let people know some things they have in common earlier in the game.
Absolutely. Using smart tools to be able to help you understand people better and make those connections better. That's the dream when it comes to advancements in technology, in my opinion. And I think that's a beautiful
Totally.
way to be building it.
And there will be a bit of a tech background, tech platform too, where their family profile will live and they can make updates so that sharing information with people, as well as all of the resources to support the class. So if you miss something in the class one day because we're talking quick or it just doesn't resonate, you can always go back to that and learn more about feeding or diaper changing or all of those things.
Georgia, thinking through a little bit more, you talked about KPIs and measurements earlier. And one of the things that I've learned over the years is that when you start and understand how you're going to be measuring success, it's going to help make sure that you actually achieve those things and give a good experience to your community members. So I'd love to ask you two quick questions about that. Maybe you could talk to me a little bit. How do you think about success? What does success look like for Expecting Together? And then maybe you could also touch on a little bit about how you plan to measure the ongoing health of these communities as you're bringing these cohorts and people together. How do you look at making sure that's considered healthy? What do you consider to be healthy when it comes to community building? So maybe we could start with the success metrics.
Yeah, definitely. So, as I mentioned, and I feel super strongly about this, that like we're looking at 2 dimensions of success. So, one is, do parents feel more prepared? Do they feel more confident entering parenthood after they go through our course curriculum? And we ask quantifiable questions about each kind of session, speaking about feeding, speaking about the labor and delivery process. We are asking parents, do you feel more confident? Do you feel that you learned new things along the way? And we're looking at quantifiable answers. But you kind of touched on this, Matt. Like the really nice thing about community and when you stay close to the community is you always have this focus group. When people are willing to give you the feedback, you can constantly hear from them. Hey, we went super in depth on topic A, but I would have loved to go just as deep on topic B. And to be vocally self-critical, like our pilot cohort said, like feeding is so hard. Feeding a baby, whether you're breast or bottle or pumping or like all of those things, it's one of the biggest challenges. And we think you need more content there. So we're revamping the curriculum and we're going to address that.
Beautiful.
One of the metrics we care the absolute most about, and we came out of the gate really, really strong here, and I don't want to jeopardize it at all, is trust. How do you feel about the trust of the courses, the way that the curriculum was given to you? We actually give people a physical book, like that can be their Bible going into this to say, if all you take away is like this book, the questions are should 80% be answered. You're going to get the good information. And most proud of the fact that we had a unanimous 5 out of 5 people trusted us. They trusted Ashley, our head educator. And that is something I care so much about, continuing to launch this brand with care so that we don't lose that, because this is a really sensitive time in people's lives. And you don't want them to walk away and say, I'm not really totally sure that I believe the things that they told me or that that was the best advice. So those are our two. Are you more prepared? That side of the business. Then connection and community. And we went really deep on surveys there too. And we will continue to. Do you feel that you made real connections with people? What were the most valuable things that gave you that connection? And we got amazing feedback on that too. Things as simple as, this is so silly, but I don't know why I didn't think of it. People want us to wear name tags every single interaction they have with that community. Like,
Oh, I love
why
name
didn't we have
tags.
name tags? Not just on day one, days two, like sessions 1 through 4, as well as our social event. We need to learn people's names. That's super important. No problem. I will make it rain name tags. Like, not no issue. But really, I was just shocked to hear people wanted more. Like, they love the WhatsApp groups. They love being able to talk to each other. We host a night out at a bar, which for the pregnant woman, maybe, not as fun, but they can drink soda or sparkling water or whatever. And
Right.
people love that too. They're like, we loved getting to know each other outside of that classroom setting. And even then, from the community building and the success there, we're not trying to make it feel too much like a classroom. We are doing a lot of making decisions with data. And I am asking these cohorts a lot of questions, the communities. And I've been super fortunate thus far that they've been really proactive in feeding me back information. And I say, don't be nice. Be honest with me. What are the things that you want to see the next time around? And we just, beauty of the crowd and exactly what we talk about with community is I could sit here and use AI to brainstorm or think to myself, keep myself up at night. 10 minutes with these groups just telling me what they liked and didn't like and what to double down on, I get infinitely more information than I could ever come up with myself. So, really leaning into that like feedback loop, and we're going to grow with the real things they tell us they are interested in and want more of.
That's so beautiful. One of the best community builders I know is a gentleman by the name of Nick Gray. He wrote an awesome book called The 2 Hour Cocktail Party, but it's all about gathering together. He is well known for, I will die on the hill that every event, doesn't matter whether it's friends or anything, you do name tags. He's so passionate about name tags. Of course, you don't even think about it, but it really helps foster that. And of course, scientifically, socially, there's so much evidence to show that you get the right people in the room. That's just so good for your brain. It's so good for your body, your emotional, physical well being, all of it. Paint a little bit of a picture for me. We talked a lot about the success of Chicago and how you're planning to grow that. What does this look like when it gets bigger and broader? How do you scale Expecting Together, and what does that look like? Maybe if you could tell me, paint a quick picture for me what this looks like in the coming years.
Totally. So I am not launching a local Chicago community club. I am, but that is not our mission here, and that is not the vision of this company. I have been fortunate. Like, Chicago is where I call home, but I was actually born in St. Louis, Missouri, and I went to NYU for school and then lived in Seattle. I feel fortunate that I've seen a lot of different places throughout the US and have been able to get a lot of feedback like across the country. And this issue of the lack of preparedness, the lack of community, it is an epidemic. Like, it is no joke. I think that
100%.
there is real work to be done for American parents, high, low, east, west, everywhere. So Chicago this year is we're kicking it off. That is where we are, as we say, like building the blueprint for what this looks like city to city. And we are going to use data to decide where we scale next, looking at cities where there are a lot of babies being born. And we have a big market to go after, of course. This is a business that we're building, so I have to be realistic about that. But where is their demand? I do have a wait list right now. If anyone is interested and sees themselves having a child in the next year, expectingtogether.com, please go and fill out your information. We are using that as a data point to decide where we go next. And some of the issues that we've talked about today, like what are cities that people move to because they are moving for school or they're moving for a
Mm,
job, like where people are yearning for that
yeah.
community, maybe at a slightly deeper level. Those are places I'm very excited to launch next. But 2026 is a big year for us. Chicago is 2025, like proving it, working out the kinks, like in terms of, like I said, refining the curriculum, understanding kind of our staffing and how we're looking at space. Like, all of this will be done in pop up spaces, but finding like those really cozy, nice spaces. This is an elevated, like premium experience. We want people to feel that they're joining a club and it's cool. And if they're going to go spend their few hours on a Saturday with new friends, that they're doing it in a way that feels right and nice and fun for them. So, getting all those things worked out, and then we will have, no pun intended, a playbook to say what's the next city, using data to decide where we go from there. And I have a hypothesis that I'm really excited to test, that I think 80% of everything we launch in one city will copy paste. And then there will be 20% of things that are really local to a city. And like, we're
Right.
going to have to sort out and our go to market strategy and how we partner potentially with like clinicians and OBGYNs or therapists, people that have voices in this space that would recommend us, like building those relationships. But these are all challenges we're super, super excited about. A call to action for your community is, if you are a parent or you think you will be a parent anytime in the future and this appeals to you, please go to our website, fill out our intake form. And that is a factor in how we think about where we're going next. But long term, we want to be in every major metro suburban area in the US.
Amazing. Amazing. This has been such a special conversation, Georgia. I really appreciate you taking the time to share your insights and wisdom for these community builders and, of course, expecting parents. I'd love to conclude with maybe a little bit of a magic wand question. I always love these, but we talked a lot about society and culture, and of course, like each individual city mattering. But there's obviously, hundreds of thousands of people that are having children all over the world at any one given point. Can you talk to me a little bit about the kind of the current way that society supports individuals transitioning into parenthood? There's an obvious gaps here, but maybe these aren't things that people think about. If I were to give you that one magic wand and you could change like one key aspect of how society currently supports individuals transitioning into parenthood, talk to me a little bit about what you would want to be changing and why.
I mean, one thing,
I
Matt,
know it's
that is
tough.
a loaded question. I think that this is like just such a vulnerable time in parents' lives, and we are falling so miserably short in the US. We spend more in the US per childbirth than any country in the world, and we have some of the worst
Wow.
outcomes when it comes to moms and babies and even like family outcomes.
Yeah.
So there is something like much, much bigger and structural. And I will be the first to say I was given my job here in the UK was protected for a year after I had my daughter. And I want to be clear, that wasn't like fully paid, but I had the flexibility to say for a year when I'm ready to go back to work. And
Right.
culturally, it was very much accepted to say this is the time you need with your family, with your daughter, to take the time you need to heal. And I think there is something so broken in the US where like the average parent is going back to work so quickly, many times like not physically healed at all and like emotionally and the bonding that goes on with children. There's so much work to be done there. And I joke that this is a business venture for me, expecting together, but if all goes well and one day I can pivot into the philanthropy or the policy work side, like I would love to see that we structurally change for parents, just paid family leave. That is critical. And then, uh, you know, this is super vision, but we've talked a lot today about how I really want to bring partners along on this ride. And I think that when partners and men and dads are included and they can build empathy for what is happening with mom and baby, they will be better evangelists, they will be better advocates, and they will go into their work structures and say, hey, like we need to give a bit more than 4 weeks paid, or we need to give people more flexibility to come back. And I think we've made this such like a woman's conversation. And it is like it is a mom's thing. It totally is. But I think I'm really looking forward to expanding the conversation and bringing partners along on the ride because, like, it impacts them too, and they need to be advocates for how we change things at a societal level too. It's day 1, like, we have a very long way to go, but I think expecting together is step 1, and I'm really excited about the communities that we're building, but I think there's so much more needed, and, like, it's not I don't know, it's to say it's life or death. It kind of is, like, it's
No,
the
really, it
most
is.
thing, like having a child and or building our next generation and having strong family structures. I don't think there's many people that would disagree with me that we need to do the best we can for families, for parents, for moms, for babies, because it really matters. It really matters.
It's a beautiful mission. The opportunity for mutual enrichment is so high, and I can't think of anybody better to tackle this. So, Georgia, thanks for taking the time today. I'll make sure that we've got all the great links and ways that people can find and connect with you. Is there anything in particular that you would prefer people to engage with, or any links, social, anything like that that they can get in touch
Yeah,
with you?
we're really like I said, 2025 is our big building year and a big building year for me as I'm building this business and building a baby due in July. So bear with it. If you're reaching out and we're a little slow, we're just got a lot going on, but in a good way. But
You're
yes,
building your
our
village.
website, yeah, building our own village here. I'm hiring lots of people and building my own village and my family. But yes, expectingtogether.com. Check us out. Like you can learn even more about the things that we've talked about today. Our Instagram handle is expecting.together. Content continuing to come there. So yes, give us a follow, join the wait list. The wait list also like tell us what you're thinking. We're all for feedback. If you have any ideas about how we grow this or the city we go to next, we're super excited to hear it.
Amazing. It's going to be great. Thanks, Georgia. Thanks for the time today. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Matt. It was lovely. Can't wait to stay close and get even more tips from you about building community. You're the pro.
Oh, I appreciate that very much.